So, just in your own words, tell us the story of Pawn Sacrifice from the beginning to the end.
Whoa.
In your own words.
Okay. Well, Pawn Sacrifice tells the story of a young man named Bobby Fischer, who was a prodigy of chess by the age of 6, and who became a grandmaster even by the age of 12 or 13. It happens all at the time of the Cold War. And as Bobby's fame grows, it becomes increasingly clear that he's on a collision course to possibly become the first American to take on the world champion of chess, and those are the Russians. The Russians have dominated the world of chess throughout history and have never been beaten. And it tells the story of this young man who has all sorts of personal demons, psychological demons that eventually drove him to a terrible end of mental illness, who fights those demons even as he goes up against the Soviet Union and ultimately wins.
Looking at Bobby Fischer's life, there's been several different stories on his childhood as being this childhood prodigy. Mm-hmm. How did you creatively span that time in Brooklyn to the ultimate story of...
Well, what I know about madness, and I know it through some experience of friends who have had real problems, is that the madness is there. The psychological issues are there. They could be congenital or brain chemistry. But the currency that they take on is often from their childhood. And we felt it was important to show the fact that he was the child of communists in Brooklyn, that they marched, for the Rosenbergs, and they were surveilled by the FBI, and that he had a certain paranoia instilled in him even as a child, so that later, as that began to blossom in his life, you can understand why that would be the form that it would take. So we begin there at his childhood, and then we skip very quickly into his really his assault on the World Championship.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Were you a chess player before making this film? Did you?
Yes,
learn
I was. I think the phrase is Patzer. I was a mediocre chess player, and I played as a kid in high school, and I would play in various dorms in college, and sometimes against my computer on an airplane. But I was by no means, good.
Tell me about the casting process. How did Toby get involved? Michael?
Well, Toby had wanted to do the story for a very long time and had been involved in its development very early on. And I think certain great actors, have an instinct as to what they can do well. I think somewhere in him he knew that he had in him some personal identification that he could sort of transform into this character. Liev Schreiber is the greatest stage actor of his generation, I believe, and the fact that he did this language thing with Russian is off the hook. It's remarkable that he does these scenes with Russians, and they literally couldn't believe how good his Russian is. I made a movie with Liev already, so I knew his gift, and I'm very fond of him personally. Peter Sarsgaard, I first met Peter. I'd seen Peter's work a lot, but I made a movie with Jake Gyllenhaal and got to know Peter because he's his brother-in-law, and really liked him and have always liked his work. Peter is a chess player. Peter is, in fact, a ranked chess player, so he was a great choice. Michael Stuhlbarg is one of those actors that just reinvents himself with every movie. You just can't believe you're watching the same person. And I'd always wanted to work with him, and I was lucky enough that he said yes. And Lily Rabe, I'd seen do Shakespeare in the Park again and again. She's kind of the darling of the New York classical theater set. So we were lucky. We have really 5 of the best actors really of their generation.
Seriously.
Yeah.
It's amazing that cast is together,
yeah.
all of them. I guess let's go to, going back to Bobby's challenge between his professional success and his personal struggles. Can you elaborate or talk a little bit more about that?
Well, the nature of chess is inevitably this obsessive, compulsive, internal life where you have to imagine tens, hundreds, thousands of moves. So anybody who already has the propensity of being self-contained or internal, and then that's like gasoline and matches. That's like literally pouring rocket fuel on a flame that already exists. So someone who's already deeply internal becomes even more so as you focus on chess. And the pressure of media culture can't be underestimated. This is a time when it was just starting and nobody knew what it was. And suddenly he's being pursued. and suddenly he's being interviewed, and suddenly he's being photographed, and suddenly, you know, anybody who has any kind of paranoia, which he did, that was just, you know, a terrifying experience.
Sure.